Most people think exposure is all about making an image brighter. That is why you see most of this edited image are looking flat, washed out, or unrealistic. You are welcome to Nextlight Media. If this is your first time coming across our channel, we specialize in photo editing, retouching, and photography, helping creators improve their skills. So today we are starting our Camera Raw filter training, and under Camera Raw filter we are starting with understanding the use of exposure. So today we are going to be talking about the use of exposure, and number one here is what exposure really means. Yes, what exposure really means. Exposure control the overall brightness of your image. Yes, not the highlight, not the shadow, but everything on that image, the background, the clothes, the color, everything. That is what exposure represents. That is what exposure control. That is why once you adjust exposure, it affects the highlight. You will see most of the parts that have light, they begin to overbright. Yes, that is why they begin to overbright. So exposure control overall brightness of an image, not the highlight, not the shadow, but everything on that image. And number two here is the common mistake beginners make. Yes, what are those common mistakes beginners make when adjusting exposure? Most beginners increase exposure when an image is dark, but mind you, this image might not look underexposed, but they go ahead and increase the exposure. That is why you see some of this image, they look burnt, they look overdone. If the image is heavy highlight, then you go ahead and increase the exposure. It's going to make the image look burnt, it's going to make the image overdone, and it will lose texture. So you have to be careful when increasing your exposure. Yes, you have to be careful. Now, and number three here is when to increase exposure. Yes, so when should I increase my exposure? I know some of you will ask, so when should I increase my exposure? Now, you only increase your exposure when the image is genuinely dark. Yes, what I mean is when the overall image is dark, everywhere is dark, the face, the cheeks, the forehead, the clothes, the background, everything is dark, then you can increase your exposure. Yes, that is when you can increase your exposure. And number four here is when not to increase exposure. When not to increase exposure. Yes, we just talk about when to increase exposure. This one now is when not to increase exposure. If your image is having only highlight, then you don't need exposure. Yes, you don't need exposure. If your image is having highlight, you don't need exposure. For example, the forehead, the cheeks, the nose, the clothes, they are having highlights. You don't need exposure. Yes, if all these things I just mentioned now are blowing out, you don't need exposure. All you have to do is to work on your shadow and the highlight. Exposure is not your problem in this case. Then you work on your shadow and your highlight. Yes, and number five here is what are, sorry, this place is supposed to be R. What are the professional tips for exposure? What are the professional tips for exposure? What are the professional tips for exposure? Exposure can be adjusted first or last, depending on your image. Yes, and when I say depending on your image, you know, all lighting are not the same. Sometimes your image might look dark, yes, might not have highlights. Then you will have to increase the exposure before you do other adjustment, and it should be little. Yes, and it should be little. And sometimes your image might have highlights. I have already talked about this in number 2, in number 3, and number 4. Sometimes your image might have highlights. You will have to reduce the highlights and shadow before you can increase the exposure. Yes, so all you have to know is that exposure only control the brightness of an image. Yes, it only control the brightness of an image. Yes, and most professional editor use between plus 0.10 to plus 0.40. That is when you are increasing the exposure. Yes, that is when you are increasing the exposure. And if you are decreasing the exposure, is between minus 0.10 to minus 0.40. Yes, don't over reduce your exposure, don't over increase your exposure. You have to be careful. So the summary of what we have talked about is exposure is not for forcing brightness. Yes, it's not for forcing brightness. It is for setting the correct base light of your image. So you have to know this. Exposure is not for forcing brightness. It is for setting the correct base light of your image. So this is all about exposure. I hope with this training you will be able to understand the difference between exposure, highlights, and shadow, when to increase exposure and when to decrease exposure. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification for you to receive more of our video. Yes, and also if you are looking forward to collaborate with an editor who can help you carry out your photo editing project, we are always available. All you have to do is to send us a DM or reach out to us on WhatsApp. Our details is on the description. So send us a message. Let's collaborate. This is Nice Light Media. See you all in our next session.